Yeah, I am doing staff if you haven't figured that out today. Pastor Chris had another event to go to, and he'll be back this afternoon. But yeah, so he was like, have a thought ready. So here we are with a thought. But yeah, the one that just kind of hit me, I'm going to give a little backstory before I share it. So it would have been around, I guess, the beginning of September that I went away to a retreat, and I felt like God kind of dropped in my spirit on the way down there, but the question was just, what's the difference between the hidden place and a hiding place? And I was like, I don't know, God, like, what is the difference? And that just kind of kept lingering in my mind the whole time that the 3 days I was away. And so I'm going to talk today about the hidden place versus the hiding place. And we always think about like the hidden place being that secret place, right, with God. And you see it all throughout the Bible. I'm going to give you a few scriptures. Colossians 3:3 is, I think, one of the most significant ones for me, that says, "For you have died and your life is hidden with Christ in God." So there's this aspect that now we're what, right? We're in Christ. And then David talks about it all the time. So Psalm 31:20 says, "You hide them in the secret place of your presence." Psalm 27:5 says, "For in the day of trouble he will conceal me in his tabernacle. In the secret place of his tent he will hide me. He will lift me up on a rock." Psalm 119, verse 114 says, "You are my hiding place and my shield. I wait for your word." Psalm 46, verse 1 says, "God is our refuge and strength, an ever-present help in trouble." So there's this massive theme, right, about God being our hiding, our refuge, our secret place to go in with his presence. And I felt like the Holy Spirit was just starting to highlight to me that there are moments in our life when we are more inclined to go into that hidden secret place, often because we are seeking refuge from something, right? We're like, God, I'm here because I'm in trouble. I need you. But how often do we go to the hidden place because we just want to be with him in his presence, right? It says that the secret place of your presence, right? Where we go to be with him. And I found myself just kind of wrestling with this question because I was like, man, God, I feel like I spend time with you. So what are you really trying to say to me? Because I was like, I feel like I'm going with you to the hidden place. And God just kind of highlighted to me this difference of like, sometimes I'm going to the hidden place, but sometimes I'm going to this hiding place where it's almost like this self-protective, like it's almost like a camouflage of like, I'm going to you, but I'm not fully going to you, right? So I'm going to read you in Genesis chapter 3. So in this we have, right, Adam and Eve, they've just eaten of the apple. And let's pick it up at verse 8. He says, "Then the man and his wife heard the sound of the Lord God as he was walking in the garden in the cool of the day. And they hid from the Lord God among the trees of the garden. But the Lord God called to the man, 'Where are you?' He answered, 'I heard you in the garden, and I was afraid because I was naked, so I hid.'" And God just kind of highlighted to me, like, there's this difference where, like, I'm actually going to your secret place. The garden suddenly had turned from, like, it was a secret place where they walked with God to a place where they were hiding from God. Because there was something there that they're like, I'm not ready to address with you yet, God. I'm hiding from you. And I just felt like there's this sense that's like, am I actually withdrawing to be with God, or am I withdrawing to those familiar places? I could say, like, people always like, oh, your prayer closet. Sometimes, right, we withdraw in this proverbial, like, I just need a minute. So we'll go to our room, right, and we'll be like, okay, but instead of, like, seeking God, we'll be like, I'm just going to take 5 minutes and scroll Instagram, or I'm going to turn on an episode and just check out, right? And I want to talk specifically about, like, what is that mindset that differentiates, are we going to the hidden place or are we hiding and checking out, right? And there's this story that, man, I've been unpacking for a while now, and there's not enough time to go through all of it. But we're going to go to 1 Kings chapter 19. And this is Elijah. And he's basically now just scared of Jezebel. So we're picking up where he's running away, right? So we're going to go to chapter 19, verse 3 says, Elijah was afraid and ran for his life. When he came to Beersheba in Judah, he left his servant there, while he himself went a day's journey into the wilderness. And then he says, he came to a broom bush, sat down under it, and prayed that he might die. I have had enough, Lord, he said. Take my life. I am no better than my ancestors. Then he lay down under the bush and fell asleep. All at once an angel touched him and said, get up and eat. He looked around, and there by his head was some bread baked over hot coals and a jar of water. He ate and drank and then lay down again. The angel of the Lord came back a second time and touched him and said, get up and eat, for the journey is too much for you. So he got up and ate and drank. Strengthened by that food, he traveled 40 days and 40 nights until he reached Horeb, the mountain of God. There he went into a cave and spent the night. And the word of the Lord came to him, what are you doing here, Elijah? He replied, I have been very zealous for the Lord God Almighty. The Israelites have rejected your covenant, torn down your altars, and put your prophets to death with the sword. I'm the only one left, and now they're trying to kill me too. The Lord said, go out and stand on the mountain in the presence of the Lord, for the Lord is about to pass by. So what I find interesting is, right, Elijah's running away, and he's fearful, and he's like, they've killed all the prophets, and I'm the only one, so now they're coming to get me. Like, I asked for you to just kill me, because this is too much to bear, and I'm just ready, just take this from me, God. I don't want to be doing this anymore. And God sends an angel, and the angels take care of him. He goes to a cave, and proverbially is like hiding again, and he's still in the same place where he's like, but God, you strengthened me for this journey. I got here, but I'm still just like, they're coming for me, and this is too much. I'm just hiding, God, from this. And the Lord's like, what are you doing here? Yeah. Like, you still have a purpose and a calling on your life, and I didn't tell you to come hide in this cave. Yeah. And he's actually like, come out, and I'm going to pass by it. Presence, right? And so there's this whole part there. But the thing that I find so interesting is that, like, Elijah, right, he's fleeing from fear. He's fleeing from failure. Yeah. He's fleeing from overwhelm. He's like, the Israelites have torn down the altars. Basically, a prophet who you would think, right, a prophet, they would get their win is like, the people have turned back their hearts to God, right? Like, there's a revival happening. Instead, the opposite is happening for him. All of Israel is like turning away. And he's like, that's it, God. I failed. I'm out. And now they're chasing me for my life. Like, can I just call it quits? I've just got nothing left. And God's like, why are you hiding? My presence is here. Elijah went not to the hidden place of refuge. David also running for his life. But you hear him being like, I'm hiding. I'm safe in you. This is where I get my strength, God. Like, over and over again, where Elijah's like, I'm just trying to check out. Like, can you just leave me alone to check out? And God's like, no, I'm not done with you. So he still has this calling and purpose, right? And he sends them out. What I find fascinating is literally the next part of that chapter. He goes and Elisha gets his calling, right? Who's basically going to then follow with him and go on, right? But it's so interesting because I feel like, again, that's showing us that, like, often that somebody else's calling is right off the back of our yes, our continued, right? And I feel like so often we try to, like, withdraw and hide. And to bring us back to Psalm 119 is like, for you're my hiding place and my shield. I wait for your word. How good are we at actually withdrawing with God and waiting for his word? Right? I feel like sometimes in my life, I withdraw and I just check out. I'm like, all right, God, that was a big one. I'm just going to check out, and I'll come back out when I feel ready. And God really just kind of took me on this journey, honestly, of like, but Shannon, what is the difference between a hidden place and a hiding place? Is the intention of your heart and your mental capacity, right? Like, where's your mind on this and where's your heart? For me, the hidden place is like, man, God, I long to be with you. And even if I'm like, maybe I don't have an intense longing right now, but like, I'm clinging to you still, and I'm going to bring this to you because I know that you are bigger than me to carry this. Versus a hiding place for me is like, it's enough. I'm capped out. Can I just like withdraw? And to be honest, a lot of this year has been me fluctuating between those two spaces. Like, if I were to say this year has been, like, good, I would be lying to you. This year has been tougher than any other that I think I've had to walk in years of my life. And I think, like, everything from, like, you talk about, this year started off with, like, yeah, this is going to be great. And very quickly it was like, this is difficult, God. What in the world? Everything from, like, church to personal home life. We moved into a wonderful house, but my husband also lost his job. And I was like, cool. You remember that mortgage, God? We felt pretty strongly we should buy this house, but no, we need him to have a job to pay that mortgage, right? Months of him not, like, just looking for work. At the same time that pretty much his entire family came to live with us, which was wonderful to see them, but also you're like, man, this is a lot of just home. Right, for me was a place where I could come, that refuge part, and it was like I'd come home and it'd be like more people to take care of and have to be present for, and I was like, I just want to check out. But now I have to show up and learn how to be present for these people and make the most of their time here, when I just wanted to be like, man, God, can we just rewind and rewrite some of this year? Because there was so much happening on so many levels that I couldn't even begin to get into at this moment. But, like, there's just so many things that I felt like I was constantly struggling with, like, all right, God, am I actually withdrawing to be like, okay, God, I'm in this hidden place. Like, I'm coming to you for, like, your strength. Or I would be, like, literally 2 days later, it would be like, God, I'm just going to check out. I'm just going to lay in bed. That's it. That's it. Yes. I'm praying? No. I'm just going to lay here, and mentally I'm just checking out. And just to say, like, I do think you need rest, right? You need the nap. That's all very true. But I think there's a difference. I had become, like, started to get in a pattern where I was more quickly just being like, I just want to, like, just check out for 20 minutes versus, like, God, I want to, like, hand this to you, right? And I felt like that was God saying, Shannon, you're now going into a hiding place where you're just trying to, like, withdraw. And God was asking me, like, hey, what are you doing here? Like, I'm asking you to come because I'm wanting you in my presence to come before you, but you're checked out in the cave, hiding somewhere, and I didn't tell you to go there. I'm actually trying to get you back on this journey. And I was like, but this is not where I'm at right now. Like, can you just leave me alone to be in this cave? You know, Elijah's like, they're killing people out here. Like, I don't want to go back here. Mine's not that extreme at all. But I was like, God, like, I've been battling, like, physical illness for most of this year that doctors had no idea what was going on. And I'm like, aren't I justified to just lay in bed and be like, can I have a little pity party about the fact that, like, this is overwhelming some days? And God's like, no, I didn't call you so that you could hide, right? And so this year has been a lot of that for me, and I felt like God was just like, share with them that there is a difference between how they approach me. And are they coming to me in the sense of, like, I'm actually, like, want to be with you, I'm going to wait on your word, or I'm just going to check out until someone gives me a word of encouragement or I feel like it. I'm just going to hide and bury my head because this is becoming too much. And in that, I felt like God specifically, when I was on this retreat, God was like, there's a hiding place that, like, if I've taken you away to this hidden place, it's meant to be in, like, I'm trying to, right? They often say, like, leaders will, like, go and, like, kind of have that moment and God's revealing things, and then they come out and it's like, lead. But there's a difference in, like, I'm just, like, hiding behind certain things. And God was like, there should be a vulnerability. And often what I'm trying to hide is, like, the things that I don't necessarily always want to be vulnerable to God with or to others with. Because, again, it's like there's just too much to unpack. So I'd rather just, like, put the covers over my head and be like, I'll just figure it out tomorrow, right? And so I just, the simple question, are you withdrawing to the hidden place, or are you withdrawing to hide? Are you waiting for his word, or are you just trying to check out? And I felt like in this, God just started to kind of, like, highlight to me, like, how do people actually experience you? And I was like, oh, all right, God. Like, am I actually rested and secure in God? Or am I this wavering, unpredictable mood? Right? Am I, like, just spewing and emotional, or am I confident and faithful? And I feel like part of that for me was very much linked to where was I going? Was I in the hidden place? Oh, yeah. Easy to be rested and secure in Christ because I've been in his presence. He's pulling out the things that I'm like, don't even know how to deal with. But if I'm in the hiding place, I'm a bit aloof, and I'm a bit like, I can't lean in this moment because I'm just trying to like ignore it till it goes away kind of thing, right? And I feel like how people experience us is directly related to that hidden and hiding place. Are we running from our calling because we're terrified of it? And I say terrified because I think some of us are terrified of our calling. And that could sound intense, but I think like the biggest thing for me that was like an aha, like, wow, Shannon, you're an idiot, was for the longest time I wrestled with like my voice and being like, oh God, I've got nothing worth saying. Like, somebody else should be pastor. I don't need that pastor on my title. Ordination, that was this year too. Hello. When I said this year, it was crazy. Like me wrestling the fact that like, God, are you actually calling me to this? Like, I don't desire to be that. Like I don't have that need to have that. But God's saying like, but what I've called you to and what you need are very different things. And like me being like, but I have nothing worth saying. And God was basically, he's pretty savage with me. And he was like, that's the whole point. And I was like, cool. Because we're actually his vessel and he's trying to move through us. It's not about like what I have to bring, but it's what he's trying to do through me. And I think for so long I was tied up in this like, oh, well, there's nothing that like I would have that be worth to anyone to hear. And God was like, yeah, I don't care what you have to say. It's what I'm trying to say through you. And I was like, oh, that's humbling and great. But I think for so long that kept me locked in this like piece of my calling that I didn't want to ever like actually like step into, because it was too exposing to the things that I was like, oh, but I don't get this part, God. And so I like a timidness to actually step into it, right? And I think that there are some of you that are in this hiding place with like places of your calling and purpose. Elijah was in a cave ready to quit. And God was like, I need you to go back out there. I need you to call Elisha to his calling and to continue to carry on, because the Israelites have to come back to me. There's just so much in that. And then, lastly, and then I'll open up to like some Q&A, but just this thought, like, guys, I think we often make it bigger than it needs to be. And I think that's normal because we're humans. Right. And so I think sometimes we become very accustomed to like culture's rest, right? We were on a great homecoming series, is like, oh, let's just binge Netflix. That was a great weekend. Like, oh yeah, so refreshing. I got to sit home and do laundry and watch Netflix. And yeah, there's part of that that's like, man, I got to enjoy my home and like just chill, right? But my spiritual man is actually really tired. Yeah. And I feel like that's the biggest difference in this, is like the hidden place and the hiding place. Are we hiding from God's presence? And the hidden place is like he's calling you out and saying, come be with me in my presence, right? And I think for me, they could sound so similar, because it's like you're hiding something, but it's like, are you being hidden with Christ, right, in his presence? Or are you just running away from it because it's just, life is all too much and I just need a break, I just need to check out for a minute, and so I'm going to hide away. But before we know it, we've been hiding in the cave for a very long time, and God's like, what are you even doing here, right? God was so used to walking around the garden with Adam and Eve, And one day they weren't around to walk with him. And he's like, what you guys doing? He already knew, but he was like, what you doing? And they're like, well, we heard you, so we hid. And he's like, basically like, how sad that it's like, we'll hide from him because we don't feel like we can go to him, right? Too shameful, too whatever, right? What is that thing that's pulling us away from him? And that's my homework too, guys. What circumstances or feelings cause me to withdraw a certain way? So what circumstances or feelings cause me to withdraw a certain way? And then similarly, like, in what moments do I turn to God? And when do I tend to bury my head and check out? And just track yourself for the next couple weeks. Like, when you find yourself in one of those moods, because we've all been there. If we're honest, like, we've all had one of those moments where we're like, I just want to just crawl on the couch and mindlessly watch something right now. But there's something internally. It's not just about like, oh, I'm going to rest. Because let's be honest, if it is like, oh, I'm just excited to watch this show, we have a much different attitude going to that couch. We're like, ooh, my show's on. I got my popcorn. Versus like, we're checking out is like, you barely make it to the couch and you're like, the blanket's like, you barely have your eyes out to watch the TV and you're not sure you're even going to stay awake for the episode. You're just using it because you're like, I just can't deal with anything else going on right now, right? So one of those moments that tend to have you just bury and check out, and just track yourself for the next few weeks, because I feel like it was very revealing to me to know, like, when God kind of put this on me back in September, as I've watched myself, I'm like, oh, there are definitely, like, certain things that have themes that's like, and I'm feeling this certain type of way, or like if these moments have piled and it's like I haven't caught a break, it's like overload has happened and I didn't set myself up well to be like, I needed pauses through the day to actually make it to the end of the week before the end of the week is just like hit me and I'm like, I've got nothing left to give life. So that's my staffy thought. And we have time for any questions you guys have, not just for me, but anyone in this room. So we'll open it up for any Q&A you guys might have.
So good. We had a form with some questions. We wanted to look at those.
Yeah. We might say, I know Pastor Chris wanted that, so I might, but if we don't have any questions on this, then I definitely can, if you want to send me the form, I can open it.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Just to what you were speaking to, Shannon, of how, like, you were saying, like, you didn't set yourself up well to where you just became so overloaded where you didn't have anything else to give. Like, maybe can you talk to some practicals on how you created those pauses, either throughout the day or throughout the weeks or months or whatever, that really helped you prolong your endurance, if that makes sense?
That's a great question. Honestly, one of the best things that I think lately that somebody has told me was, she was talking about Genesis and the fact that, like, at the end of each day when God's creating earth, he paused and he was like, that's enough for today. He could have created everything, right, in like one instance. But he models this behavior of like, he created it and then he was like, and that's good for today. And he called it good. And then the next day he did something else and it modeled this pattern. And I think for me, my achiever, because my number one Gallup strength, if we were to talk strength in this, is achiever. And it really gets me in trouble in this instance because I will try to pack so much in a week because it does feel great to like cross it off. But then there's another side to me that's like starts to drain because I haven't set the right things in to refuel along the way. And so like that was it helped my achiever in me be like, it's okay to say like, this was good for the day and that's all that needed to get done today. Because I would try to like pack it in to the point where I was like, there was a part of me, the achiever me is like, yeah, look at all this stuff I got done. And then there's this other part of me that's like, you're so tired, your eyes are barely still awake. And there's a part of you that's like drained because you didn't have any meaningful conversations. You've just been tasking away, right? And so I think finding that balance in every day along the week is big, and knowing, like, being able to kind of pray over that list with the Holy Spirit and be like, okay, what's enough for today, right? I think there's that strategy of like, okay, if something is due at the end of the week, how do I still like set up my week to finish this? But I think knowing that like it doesn't all have to get done like in this jam-packed way, that it's like it's meant to be like, okay, and now I'm good. So like a practical to that would be like every day. Honestly, kids kind of really humble you in this way because they have their own agenda, and like there'd be days when I would be like, yeah, no, you are killing my like achiever that's like, I was planning to get these things done tonight and you're on your own agenda. And so I think there are certain things that I like, allowing margin in your day, right? To be like, it's kind of an unplanned, like I just get to go with the flow of what that night. Sometimes for me, it's like a phone call with a friend that's like, man, I haven't caught up with you in a while, but like, yeah, my friend group loves Marco Polo. It's actually sitting and listening and like catching up with them, which has been really great. I think there's like with family, like for those of us like you're about to be married, like actual intentional time with your spouse, because before you know it, those things like they disappear in the calendar. Like you're running from one event to the next, you're going to one thing or the other, and it's like actually like setting aside that time because it's like that priority of relationship, because it is important. But also those relationships, like they feel in a way of like that person knows you the best, and so sometimes they can read you so well that it's scary, or they're like oh, you're having a week, huh? And so they're also though great at like, all right, I know how to make you laugh and like have fun and like break you into the silliness. There's no one that knows how to make me like get into silly Shannon faster than Ichwa does, because it's like they'll just like get playful and it's like, oh, let's just like goof around, like, you know, like banter about nothingness, or like we get really sing-songy. Like if you know Shannon, it's like I'll just sing about random things, and so like, but that's like again like breaking you out of the intensity of it. And I think so much of the time we end our weeks just kind of on empty because it was so intense and we didn't have those pauses. So I would like say that. I don't know if anyone else has anything they'd add to that practice.
That was really good. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So you said, you asked, do we withdraw and wait, or do we withdraw and check out?
Mm-hmm.
How do you recognize that you are checked out in the wait?
Mm-hmm. I think I'm checked out in the wait if, like, I'm not even remotely questioning God. Like, hey, like, what's next? Or, like, asking God, like, to reveal something to me. It's almost like how do I phrase it? It's like I become more isolated. And so it's not necessarily, sometimes it could be an isolation from people, but for me, often it's also like an isolation from just like, God's voice. It's like, he would have to like really smack me and like, hey, wake up. It'd be like, I'm almost like intentionally just like, all right, God, I'm going to do my own thing, and I'll let you know when I'm ready to like chat with you again. It's almost like, I don't know. It's like, you know he's there because he's ever present, but it's like, okay, you know, like when you've got a friend text group and they're blowing up the phone, and usually you're like, if you're like, ooh, yeah, I'm joking with everybody. And then there's other weeks where you're like, it's going off and you're like, oh, just silent. Like I'm checked out from the conversation. It's like that with God. It's like there's some times where I'm like, ooh, yeah, God. Like, and other times it's like, God, I don't want to talk right now. Yeah. Like that's checked out to me. If that makes sense. Yeah. Anyone else?
I have a question.
No, go.
Oh, okay. So I want to know like practical steps of like getting out of the cave. If like you're stuck in the cave, and like how do I get out of it? Like how do I get out of that hiding place?
Yeah, that's a great question. That I don't have all the answers to. I think there are honestly some areas in my life where I'm probably still like, okay, how do I get fully out of that? But I think the biggest things I would say is like, what I love is that Elisha was like, yeah, this is why I'm here. The honesty of like, this is why I'm here. And then God was kind of like, okay, well, here's what we're going to do about that. Step out of the cave, and my presence is going to come, which I think is so refreshing, because it's like, God wasn't like, okay, well, all right, I'm done with you. He was like, no, I'm inviting you to step out. My presence is going to come. And basically, like, take that fear, give you the ability to continue on in this journey. And I think there are parts that we have to be honest about why we're hiding. And once we can vocalize that honesty to God and be like, hey, this is why I'm hiding. And I think some of that takes our own time to actually, like, whether it's you journaling or just thinking, praying of like, why am I here? Because I think sometimes we don't even fully know why we're hiding, right? Like there's parts of us that are like, dang, I didn't even realize I was doing that, God. But yeah, when you put it that way, like here are all the reasons that I'm hiding this aspect right now from you. So I think acknowledging it, and then like setting it before God, being honest with him, and then taking that step of like, okay, God, I want to step out of the hiding place. Elijah had to physically step out. So I think it's us being like, I am wanting to, and he might highlight like specific areas to do that based on like what the things you're hiding in are. But then, yeah, and letting his presence come in and just reassure you that like, yeah, your daughter, you're called, you're loved. Like he's got great plans. He's designed you for this. And that, yeah, he views you no less because you were hiding. Like he didn't view Elijah any less because he was hiding in the cave. He still very much was like, you're my prophet. Right. So I'm going to send you like out. Like I actually have someone pretty important for you to go and put your mantle on. Wow. And just that you're still carrying a mantle that I gave you. Right. And so I think knowing that, yeah, that's what I would say. It's like the beginning, but I think there will be things that like, just know that as much as I think there are going to be things where like, yes, God, I'm ready to come out. There's always that like 1 foot in where you're like, oh, but this is harder to pull out with me. And I think, again, acknowledging and being honest with those. And then I would bring in like the accountability of your grow group leader. Friends of actually being honest about like, these are the areas that like I find it the hardest to like, yeah, to not check out with. Yeah. Brianna, did you have an add-on to that? It sounded like you had something similar you were going to ask.
Yeah, and it does like actually spark up another question for me. A couple thoughts. Like one, I would feel like whenever we experience things that are particularly difficult, it's also like an opportunity for us to increase in empathy and how we relate to other people. And I'm curious, like for you, and actually anyone else in the room that feels comfortable sharing, like when you think about being in a cave, when you think about moments of feeling like you want to isolate, like what helped you from people in your world, your community, your friends, just people in the church, like what were some of those things that like helped you walk out of it that I think we could talk about right now for us all to have like more tools in our toolkit as we notice other people who might be in a cave or isolating?
I would say that, yeah, there are, I think a friend, like, is someone who does see that in you, you know? Like, real friends, not just, like, fans of your life and, like, there to, like, you know, encourage you, but, like, friends that will be like, you're not yourself this week. Like, what's going on? Or, like, even the theme of, like, I notice when this happens, you tend, like, to disappear from the group chat. Like, I have, again, a core group of friends from college that, like, been friends for 16 years, talk daily. They're great at, like, if they haven't heard from me in X amount of times, usually one of them will have either pick up the phone and, like, call me, or they call me out, like, in the group chat and be like, Shannon, you're too quiet. What is going on? Like, no amount of busy week has, like, because they know the difference between, like, oh, Shannon's got things going on, so she'll send a quick, like, you know, haha, and, you know, or love the picture or whatever, versus, like, silent, isolated Shannon, right? And so I think having those people in your world, right, that's why I love Grow Group, is, like, when you do life with people, they tend to be able to notice, like, certain things. But then I do think there are things that, like, we're really great at hiding from everybody around us. And I think those things, it's like, as people are, like, vulnerable, I feel like it also does give us the empathy and the, like, courage to, like, share what we're experiencing. I think someone who's amazing at that is Marlene Plaza. There's nobody like her that is like, but how are you? Yeah. Like, when she looks you in the eyes, it's the scary, like, you're eating my soul, but I know you need it. And she won't let it go. Like, if you're just like, I'm good, she's like, no, what is it? And you're like, I'm just going to laugh like this so the tears don't come. But I think those kind of friends that's like, and why she, I think, has every right to do it is because she also is so good at, like, the vulnerability of, like, being like, I'm going to tell you how my week was. Like, nothing held back kind of thing. Where, like, and if you can't take it, you're not meant to be in my world at this level, right? Yeah. And so I think there's a bit of that I think you need in your friend groups. That it's not just the, like, oh, yeah, we're championing to the best day, which you should be, best friends to destiny, right? Like, know where each other are trying to go. But also I think that comfort and, like, vulnerability to, like, be real with one another along the way. And then I think, like, people who help you do it really well are the people who, like, you kind of mentioned the empathy of, like, how they receive it and hear it does matter, right? You've all had the friend, like, the people where, like, if you shared something with them and then they're like, oh. Yeah. Like, it almost terrified, like, you know right away from their response that you're like, that was too much for them, and, like, I won't be sharing that again, because the way they took it was like you almost feel like you're like, oh, okay, I feel a bit judged, but also a bit like, now I don't want you to think about me in a different way. But you know the people that it's like the empathy that meet you and they're like, oh, dang, yeah, that is big, like, unpack it with me. The ones that aren't afraid to, like, ask more questions about it, to be like, okay, tell me a little bit more about that, because I think sometimes we're very quick at being like, oh, I'll pray for you, which is great, but also like, but what else? What else is going on there? Because I think it's the what else behind it that's, like, us hiding in the hiding place, right? Because usually there's, like, layers to everything. So I don't know if that even answered your question, Brianna, but I don't know if anybody else is.
Thank you. I appreciate the vulnerability. This definitely resonates, and it's something that's really important to me to just think about, like, how can we do this better, show up well for one another. I think while we are, like, individual and have our nuance, there is a shared, like, feeling sometimes of isolation and being in a cave. And when we hear other people's, like, transparent stories, I feel like there's learning and just like, okay, well, what is one person's experience, and I can apply that potentially at another encounter. So I appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. I mean, I think for me, it was like I had hit a point, and I think that's why God highlighted it to me, because I was trying to justify that, like, I was in the hidden place. Like, I was just, I was trying to be removed, to have some time with him. And he's like, but you are actually having the time with me that you need. You're just now in a hiding place instead of the hidden place with me. And I was like, okay. But I think it's really easy to get there. And I think it's a human thing, right? Like, we're all experiencing life. And it's, our heart's desire is like, you got to do this walk with people. I love that Jesus called the disciples. There was more than one of them. He didn't, he modeled that they were doing it together. If you read the Gospels, you're like, these disciples were all over the place. And they had each other to be like, you check what this guy wants us to go do? We're trying to find a donkey, and we're just supposed to go up and ask for it? Like they're definitely, I think, having that experience together is so crucial, because otherwise I think, it becomes an isolating journey. So,
I have a question.
Yes. Lucky last.
Hi, everybody. This is, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, this is Shayla. Good morning, happy Monday. God bless you. My question pertains to, it's actually a personal experience, and this is for anybody to answer, but I believe that at times I've been in a hiding place in terms of like leadership because of whenever I study different leaders in the Bible, it's like my brain tends to hyper focus on like the failures of those individuals. Like recently I was reading about, King David, and he murdered Uriah, and committed adultery with Bathsheba, and that caused their first child to not survive, and there was a pretty much like a downfall to his lineage in a sense because of that failure. And then with Gideon creating the ephod, and that became an idol, and then it said that it became a snare to his family. So even after their great victories, it's like I can't seem to focus on the glory that comes from that. My brain automatically goes to like the failure that caused like long-lasting effects on them and their families. And so my first question was like, if you guys could help me identify exactly like what that is that causes my brain to hyper focus on that, if it's like pride or fear or what have you, and then help me to understand like in that, how can I overcome that like in the quiet place, and like what specifically like to petition God for to help me overcome that.
I'll jump in, and then if anyone wants to, I don't know, look it around. No one else seems. So here we go. Yes, it does. It's a great question, Shayla. I think I would say I will honestly, this is going to sound a little cliche, but what I would petition God for is like to highlight what it is in you that hyper focuses on it. Because it could be those things you listed, but it could be something else. And I do think the enemy likes us to focus on the things that he knows is going to cause us to hesitate and run. That's it. Yep. And that's going to be different for each one of us. And so the fact that those examples that you share are tied to like family and lineage, there might be something there to unpack. But I do think like it's those very things, especially when it comes to like leadership, because I think similarly for me in a different way, it was like, man, God, all these leaders, there's a big responsibility to it, right? Responsibility is one of my top strengths, and it's like, I can feel the weight. And so for me, there was so much of that I was like, I don't want to have to carry that God. Not that it wouldn't be an honor and a privilege, but it was almost like, that's like a lot. And God basically had to teach me that like, it's, yes, I'm having to carry it, but he carries it, right? It's his yoke and his burden. And so I think it's about how you carry those things. And I think asking God to highlight like, what is it in seeing those things that makes you hesitant to step out in leadership, whether it is fear or pride that you mentioned. I think there could be other things in there as well, but I think it's like, it's going to be very specific to you. Because I think we could look at, each one of those people, and some people will read those same stories and be like, wow, God, like, even though we're humans that make mistakes, you still use us. You're like, oh, they make these mistakes, and dang, there are consequences to that. There's definitely something there to unpack. But I would like, that's where I would start with that. I think too, in leadership, the enemy knows the areas that like, if he keeps showing us, it's almost going to keep solidifying like that mentality to us. So like in today's day and age, you can look all over the internet and be like, another failed leader, another, right? Yeah. Which can only heighten the sense of like, wow, God, I don't want this like hurt of like my mistake causing other people to doubt you, right? But I think on the flip side to that, Shayla, like that's someone who, if you know the weight of that like responsibility, you're going to hold a mantle with a lot of like respect and character and integrity, and like continue taking that like to God in every moment where it's like, wow, God, like I feel like you be that leader that's like, it is a heightened awareness, but if you can allow the Holy Spirit to shift it out of where the enemy's trying to use to keep you hiding and to shift it into like, I want to propel you out, it would actually, I think, be a great like basis of understanding for you to know like there is something that I'm carrying here that does come with responsibility and accountability and character and integrity that's needed. And I'm still a human, but I have to daily take that to God and be like, help me carry this with you and not to lose sight of that and why I'm doing it for you, God. That's what I would say. I don't know if that's helpful to you, but that's where I would start. Yeah, Sarah, please do.
I feel like I so agree with everything Shannon was saying. The thing that immediately popped in my head as you were asking that was, all of those people you're listing and you're focusing on names, and at the end of the day, it's not our name as a leader that is to hold rank, it's God's name. And I feel like all of those failures, that's every leader in the entire Bible. You're not going to ever find anybody who has not messed up or screwed up in some massive way. And I feel like that's why God shows us that, no matter what, even if we do the most glorious things for his kingdom, we're human, we fall short. And at the end of the day, the only fame that is deserved to any name is his. And I feel like all of the failures always highlight the deep, wild, merciful compassion of God. And he, think about Elijah. He goes and he hides in a cave and he has this depressed, sorrowful moment of pity. And then, God calls him out of the cave and it's the still small voice, which is so funny that he calls him out of hiding.
Yeah.
To hear a tiny voice. But then, at the end of his life, Elijah is taken up like Enoch. And he's taken up to heaven in a whirlwind, doesn't even have to die. And it's like, man, God does such grand things with us, even when we make the biggest, most awful mistakes. And so, Shayla, I would just encourage you, it's like pride and fear mixed together that keeps us oh, but what would they say about Sarah? Oh, if Sarah did this and then she fell here, they're going to just always see my fall. But it's no, on the other side of the fall, they're going to get to see the compassion and the glory and the fame of God's name as you rise above the failure that the rest of the world would crumble at. So that's what I would say to that.
Yeah, so good. Thanks.
Thank you, Sharon and Sarah. That was so good.
Come on.
So relatable. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. You're welcome. Well, guys, that is the end of our time as Staffy. Hope you enjoy the rest of your Monday. We'll see you at Town Hall.
Yeah.